Welcome, board game soloists, to Top 5 Solo Games. I'm J. Allen Riker, horror author and board game fanatic, and these are my top 5 games when I just can't be bothered. So let me explain that. Sometimes when you're tired and short on time, you want a fun, engaging, solid game experience that doesn't have a bunch of setup. These aren't games that are based on lightness. That's not what I'm getting at. They're for when I want to sit down and have a solid game experience quickly. Short to medium playtime with minimal setup. I got sick at the beginning of the year, and it took me a while to be able to get back to my table, to be able to sit for long periods of time. And so after that, I still felt friction getting big games to the table. And so I've actually been playing some of these smaller games since then. But that doesn't mean that I just want to play light games, right? And it also doesn't mean that I just want to play a physically small game, because there are physically small games that still have like a lot of setup. Okay, so first honorable mention, Regicide. Why is it an honorable mention? Because this game is on too many lists. And it's going to be on more. So honestly, this as an honorable mention makes this entire list a lie, because it is my number one game that I pull out when I can't be bothered. And I want a medium weight game with, I know it says 1.93, but that represents the rule set well, but the amount of mental crunch that goes on when you're playing this it's up there. But I don't want to explain how to play the game again, so it's an honorable mention. Just go download it. Go download the rules, because they're free to play with a normal deck of poker cards. And if you like it as much as I do, then you might find yourself buying a physical deck for $15, which is kind of crazy. But I actually think it adds a lot to the ambiance of the game. So let's get to the first real game on this list. My number 5, when I can't be bothered game, Jump Drive. Jump Drive is the little brother to Race for the Galaxy, which I have never actually played, but do want to play someday, just because it's such a classic, and I hear it's very good with the solo expansion. Jump Drive is a tableau builder where you just take a giant stack of cards, draw from it, and start building out your tableau, using what you have, the cards in your hand and your resources, to buy planets, forces, the ability to get more resources. As you build your empire, you can peacefully add planets by paying cards, or you can become militaristic and forcefully take over planets. You will probably build in one of these two directions. I have never found it very efficient to try to do both at once. So every round, you tote up your points that you get from your tableau, and like in all the best, most fun tableau builders, they start out really minuscule and get out of control by the end of the game, especially if you manage to draw a bunch of galactic trendsetters, which are practically game-breaking. I have gotten such ridiculous scores that beat your own score doesn't even mean anything anymore unless I get like 4 galactic trendsetters early in the game. But aside from that, the feeling of acceleration is very satisfying, and it's a really fun, cheap, very fast to set up game, because it's essentially just one big deck of cards. That brings us to our number 4 game for when I can't be bothered, and this is one that has appeared in a couple of lists, not as much as Regicide, so it got to stay, and that is For Northwood. I grew up playing trick-taking games. A lot of people did. There is a reason that they are so popular. Their core mechanic, the trick-taking mechanic, is just, a lot of people find it very fun and compelling. The only flaw is that they require other people, or do they? In For Northwood, you deal yourself a hand, and then you try to win tricks against the rest of your deck not in your hand. The challenge is that for each of the nobles in For Northwood, pictured here, and let me take this moment to point out how incredibly adorable they are, you have a conversation with each noble about their favorite thing, which is the suit, the Trump suit. and you have to win the hand, but you have to win the hand exactly. And you've lined up the royals on numbers 0 through 7, meaning that you need to get that many tricks to be able to actually win that royal. You have 4 nobles who will help you. Some have really powerful general abilities. Some have ones that are only useful in very specific situations, and you get them randomly. This adds a nice strategic element, as you'll see at the beginning, which will be sorts of things will be easier for you to get, whether it might be a high number of tricks or lower numbers of tricks won in a hand, depending on the powers of your nobles. And then you also get the powers of the nobles that you've beaten. So will you wait until you've gotten a bunch of powerful abilities lined up before you tackle the most difficult trick targets, even though you risk painting yourself into a corner because you could draw a hand that just makes it really difficult to get 0 tricks or seem like it's impossible to get 7 tricks? Or will you take the chance when you have the optimal hand to take out those harder ones, even though you might not have the powers to save yourself if things go wrong? I pretty much always paint myself into a corner, saving 0 and 7 for last. I don't know why I do that. It's funny because the game starts off so carefree as you're trying to get 3 and 4 tricks. By the end, you're just miserable. But it's a fun sort of miserable. If you play board games, you know what I mean, right? So, like Jump Drive, 4 Northwood is just a deck of cards. It's extremely quick to set up and get started. It plays very briskly, but it's very satisfying. It does not play itself in the slightest. It also has a little tiny book that contains a campaign of challenges to keep things fresh, along with the different ways that you will be utilizing the nobles that you draw at the beginning. So the next game on my list, my number 3 game when I can't be bothered, is one that I would pull out not when I want a bunch of crunch, a bunch of mental strain, like maybe with Regicide. It's one where it's got a lot of theme and a lot of story in a very small, easy to set up game. And that is Spaceshipped. This is probably my favorite button shy game. It's definitely way up there. It's also the biggest one for me because it's not only an 18 card game, it's actually a 36 card game because I've liked it enough to buy the 3 different 6 card expansions, each which adds a new challenge and allows for a lot of replayability because you always have to be playing with 18 at a time. So you swap these out as modules. The flow of this game is hypnotic. Here's the layout, and I can see why you would play it on carpet. Typically, I like a nice grippy material when I'm playing games, especially small games like this. I will often play them on my lap board, and I actually have a cutout bit of yoga mat that I put in the board, which really will hold on to cards very well, but you can't slide on them, so I can't use it for this game. You want to be able to, they spin around, and the reason is because each card is actually 5 cards, depending on where it is in front of you. It could be a crew member. It could be a trade good. It could be a orbital encounter, a planet side encounter, or the marketplace on a planet. So you've got 2 encounters, and then you've got the marketplace where you can trade, and these cycles so that you can plan ahead. Now, 5 cards per card, that's efficiency, right? That's a lot of game for $6, which, because I got the print and play, is what it cost me. $3 for the base set and $1 for each of the 3 expansions. By the way, that's my sort of print and play game. I do and really enjoy print and play, but because I do the kind that saves me money, I don't actually really enjoy the crafting part of it that much. And I think that my work would horrify a good print and player. I just print them, and a lot of times I put a poker sheet at the center of a card sleeve, and they're printed just on normal paper. But you know what? It gets the job done, and it costs me almost nothing. So, like I said, this game is one that I play because I feel like it's a small game that sets up super quickly, that's really big on theme. It doesn't feel like you have a ton of agency. There are definitely good strategies to follow, but if you win, it's going to depend on both doing those best practices and also not getting the cards at the wrong time that will ruin your strategies, like ones that cause you to reshuffle your deck right as you're about to sell a bunch of resources that have appreciated in value a lot between planets, and then you find out that you're going to a completely different planet with a different, completely different marketplace. So while that you don't have control over that, it does tell what I feel like is a really fun story. It really does feel like you're whizzing through the galaxy, wheeling and dealing and trying to come out on top as a scrappy little team against a big angry enemy. And those sort of chaotic events end up not feeling so punishing because they feel like a fun part of the story. I also really enjoy sliding the cards around. The physicality of games is something that is often not mentioned when it's less concrete than just really great components. You know, that's kind of what we focus on when we talk about the physicality of a game. But this is a case where even though you're just playing with cards, there is something in the physical components that just could never be matched in an app. I love just sliding the cards around between every round. And it's something that I think it's not easy to quantify in any way. I mean, it's probably impossible because the same thing that I like, somebody else could easily consider to be too fiddly. Like maybe they don't like sliding them between the different groups, these cards around to the different groups. And yet for me, it's one of the big draws of the game and the reason why I would always choose to play this physically versus if it was offered as an app. So that was my number 3 game that I play when I can't be bothered. My number 2 game is actually kind of 2 games. You'll see what I mean. So my number 2 game is Dungeon Pages, but also Dangerous Space. These games are an awesome value. They're very closely related. They're almost more, if you look here, it says re-implemented by Dangerous Space, and I think that's a good way, definitely, to look at it. They are so similar that they really aren't separate games. They're just slightly different takes with a different theme that might attract you more or less. Maybe you're all about the fantasy, maybe you're all about the sci-fi. Choose whichever you like. So Dungeon Pages came first. I did not buy this in the Kickstarter, and I feel like I really missed out. I just bought the core set that's pictured here. It came with maybe 4 or 5 different sheets of these dungeon pages. And I think that they accidentally, when you bought this at the very beginning, when they released a couple of weeks, I think they accidentally released them to everyone. So I ended up with maybe 8 of them. And I do kind of wish that I had more. And at some point, even though I already have this kind of reverse sunk cost fallacy, maybe, where I don't want to pay for the original core set again when I buy the year long, I very well may end up doing it. So anyway, that's enough of my personal struggles that have nothing to do with you. On every page, every dungeon page, you get a hero at the top. You'll see it's got a little perforation mark, so you can cut it off if you want to, although I will just use them side by side. I don't bother separating them out. Every hero has different health, different ability, and some things that can be leveled up that are often different from each other. The heroes end up feeling pretty well differentiated. So then also on every page, they give you a dungeon. The dungeon is essentially a group of different levels of a dungeon where you're going from the entrance to the treasure. I think of it as going down a level, maybe. And then you face the big dungeon that also has the big boss. And each of these dungeons has its own specific monsters that don't show up on very many other sheets, and then its own big boss. Dangerous Space is a little bit different. And this one I did back in the Kickstarter, $10, I believe, for 52 weeks of new roll and writes. What a value. It doubles, I think, when you get it outside of the Kickstarter. even then it's I think still a good value, $20 for 52 different puzzles. So in Dangerous Space, you've got, instead of the different dungeons, you've got one unified derelict ship that you're working your way through. The chambers that have the lower number of evil dice are therefore easier, so you kind of are wanting to work your way up to the command deck, and then not pictured here would be the final boss level, like command area, whatever area they've infiltrated. So I haven't mentioned how you play the game yet. You are rolling dice, trying to get the right numbers to make the paths between the objectives, whether it be the door and the treasure chest, or here you're trying to reach these flags, and also sometimes other objectives like these data chips. You can move around in a bigger and bigger kind of more freewheeling manner the further you get into the game, but the path connecting has to be solid. Every square has to be filled between the objectives, and also you ideally want to have them be numbers that are sequential, backwards or forwards, or the same number. So going to 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, and ideally in Dangerous Space, you want to use low numbers because there's a time tracker that kind of keeps track of how well you're doing, and it uses whatever the highest number is in the sequence. The game looks light and breezy. Mentally, it takes a minute to adjust to the fact that you aren't at any point, except in Dangerous Space, you get a reaction roll if you land in a dangerous space. Which, clever little double entendre there. These are spaces that are in line of sight of the enemies. So at that moment, they will roll a reaction die to whatever die you put there, and so they can attack you. But other than that, at any given point, you're not anywhere in the sheet. You can mark numbers any place that's within reach of one of your other numbers. So it's almost like your area of influence is growing and spreading rather than you being in distinct spots. And it can be a little bit hard to get your head around that, especially when it comes to attacking. But once it clicks, it's very fast. But really, this game is not a light and breezy quick affair. Like, it takes you a pretty good little chunk of time to play through, especially if you're me. I play very slowly. One of the reasons is because I'm trying to play optimally, and if you are trying to play optimally, they will take you longer. You're usually going to win. It's a rare dungeon that's so difficult that it's going to completely beat you. The question is, how well will you win? And in Dungeon Pages, I did experience getting brought right to the brink of death a number of times, and I played one of the dungeons that thoroughly killed me multiple times, and I looked it up and it was doing the same thing to other people. So both of these games are good. Which one would I advise? I'd advise you probably get the one with a theme that you like, but each one has a trait that I like a lot. In Dangerous Space, I feel like the characters are a little bit more differentiated. I like the space theme here a bit more, probably. And I really like the fact that these are not separate dungeon layers or separate dungeons, but that they're all on one ship. That unified aspect is very just mentally pleasant for me. I can't even really explain it. Dungeon Pages, however, has something that I can definitely explain why I like it. And that is, when you're playing this and you're trying to get very specific numbers on the dice that you're rolling, you can end up with a ton of what are basically throwaway dice. You need to place them someplace, but it doesn't matter that much where, as long as you're placing them someplace where they're not going to be in the way of a path that needs to be sequential. In Dangerous Space, I've found that it really feels like more of a slog to get just the right number because you can't really use them. Dungeon Pages, on the other hand, when you fill up a column, you get an experience point. And so when you're actually hoping for rolls that you can't use, not that it matters, you could also put ones that you can use, and you're pushing yourself right to the limit. Like, am I going to be able to get I really want this next boost. Am I going to be able to, and you can calculate out how many XP you've gotten. So you're like, are you going to risk rolling another hand to be able to fill in a couple more columns to get XP? it makes it feel like it serves a purpose when you're getting rolls that would otherwise be useless, and that keeps it from being frustrating. But they are both good games, and I'm looking forward to continuing to play Dangerous Space throughout the year, and I may get a review out to you guys. I don't know. So it doesn't get much easier to table than a roll and write game. The next game on our list is another print and play. At least for me it was, because they gave the option, and it gives a more traditional roll and write experience, although it's I guess a flip and write with a super strong theme. And that game, my number one game when I can't be bothered, is Flip Town. So this is a game that has only kind of more recently delivered for a lot of backers, but I backed on the print and play level and got it for a very low price. And it was so you can use a standard deck of poker cards. You don't need the special one, although I will admit it's beautiful. And I printed these as two just regular pieces of paper that I slipped into plastic report slip sheets. I don't use a laminator. I just slide these things into slip sheets. That saves me a lot of money because I don't have to keep buying slip sheets. I only need enough to fit my games like that I'm playing at that exact moment at the table, and then I can pull them out. Anyway, this game was very cheap, and I have been playing it like crazy because it's very thematic and has all of the hallmarks of the best flip and write games. So you are a cowboy doing cowboy things. You can see here the suits match up to different areas. So you've got the trail. You're riding the trail. What exactly are you doing? You're riding the trail. You've got spades or the Badlands, where you're rustling cattle, robbing stagecoaches and trains, rustling chickens when your cards are low. You've got the gold mine with diamonds, where you're digging down ever further, and you've got clubs, which means you're going to town, and there's a ton of stuff to do in town, so much that I'm not going to go into it. And then you've got the cemetery, which you can go to at any time to rob graves. And what's funny is that you can buy things to make grave robbing more easy and with less legal ramifications, because as you do some of these more illegal tasks, you build up stars, and at the end of a round you've got to either pay down those stars or you risk the sheriff catching up with you. So you can see that you draw every turn, you draw 3 cards. One of them, the suit, tells you or lets you choose where you're going. The number is the value that would say which part of the mine that you're going into. In the Badlands, what you can actually rob. And then the other card goes into your poker hand of cards, which you are building up over the course of these 15 rounds to build 3 poker hands, and you can get points based on that. Because of this flexibility, you have the ability to actually formulate a strategy. The further you specialize, like in a lot of roll and write games or flip and write games, the better you do. You get the bigger prizes by going deeper down into the mine, but then you have to take the value that you're given. So then you also have to tactically respond to what's going on, and you've got so much stuff that you can do that every draw really gives you a lot of things to consider, which I think is a lot of the fun of these. It might be on rails when you're like, yes, I'm in the gold mine and I'm going further down, and I just got the value that I need beside that diamond to get exactly what I want. But most of the time, you've got a lot of choices, and it's really fun. It is very thematic. It really feels like you are doing cowboy things. And like I said, this lets you have both strategic options and the ability to then, in multiple plays, go down multiple paths, while also giving you things to respond to tactically. There is also a lot of replay value if you play against, this is a cowbot right here. You see Wyatt Earp, the cowbot, so it gives you something other to do than beat your own score. And you also have characters that you can play as yourself, like a gambler or a snake oil salesman. They give you different starting resources and a special ability. And as you can see here, at different points in each area, it'll give you a little combo. So if you go here, it means you not only get gold, you also get to take a heart action. Now, say you're here, and then you can take this spade action. And then you go over here and you fill up your cattle wrestling. You get all three of these, and that gives you a diamond action. And then you're back to the mine. Further on down the game, you can get some really combo-tastic stuff going on, and that's always really satisfying. I think that's one of the most fun things in roll and rights, or in this case, flipping rights. So that was my list of top 5 games that I play when I can't be bothered. Minimal setup for a good gameplay experience. Do you have any games that that fit this category when you're just tired and don't want to set up a big game? Maybe you just put away a big game and can't handle diving into or taking another evening to just set up a game. What are the games that you pull off your shelf? I feel like these are the games that get played the most in an intermittent fashion. Like, you might take your big game, some big campaign game, and you might play it for 2 weeks straight. But these are the games that get 2 weeks just by coming to the table once a week, you know? So what are your games that are that you play when you can't be bothered? I'd love to hear about them in the comments. It's one of my favorite categories of games, because often they're also affordable. Small amounts of components, besides reducing setup time, also reduces cost. Anyway, that's it from me. I hope that you have a great rest of your day and keep playing solo.